So for this webinar, we wanted to cover the data import utility and all the things you can do to kind of either migrate from an existing system you might be running or from paper or spreadsheet type management. And we can import it for you. We of course charge for that service, but the utility is to a point where most of our customers are able to do the general imports. Today we're going to be covering 4 of those imports: master parts, or like a stock catalog, companies or customers that you may have, locations, specifically wells. Those are the biggest location imports that we deal with, the large well lists. Existing inventory imports, and updating stock cards or your master parts. So I guess that's 5. So we're going to start off with the simple ones, those being the company and location imports, since those require the least amount of information. Now we're in my webinar database, which is a blank database. There's no information in here really. So we'll start with the companies, and I'll demonstrate that we have no companies in here. The only one is my company, Beast Test Company. So this is the only company present in the system right now. What I've done is I prepared a spreadsheet from one of our pre-formatted spreadsheets available for download on our support website. And I'll post the link to those pages later on the YouTube video and in the chat. So if you go to the Help button here in Oil Country OS, it'll take you directly into our support site, where you can search for import and be brought to this importing data post. And here you have the different pre-configured spreadsheets available for download. However, I already have them set up here on my desktop. We're going to start with the company import, and I'll open it up so you guys can take a look at it. So here we have an example of several customers that we may have. Obviously I didn't use any real names, it's just mostly people here at Archon Data. And the type of information that we track on them, from phone numbers, emails, addresses, contact information, and the classification of company. So in Oil Country OS, a company can be a customer, vendor, shipper, manufacturer, or any combination of those 4. So when you're inputting the data into this spreadsheet, you're going to put a 1 under the appropriate column if that company belongs in that category. So I could do customer, vendor, and shipper. And if you leave it blank, then that's how you need to note that it's not that. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You just plug in the information, and usually this is stuff you guys already have, right? It's nothing new. You just put it in this spreadsheet, and then we'll go ahead and import it. So let's take a look at what importing something like this actually looks like. So we're going to go into the administration console. If you've used the system for any period of time, you know that you do that by right-clicking on the Settings button and clicking Admin Console. In the left-hand menu, you'll see that there's an import section. If you go ahead and extend that, we're going to be using the general import. Just double-click on that, and it'll pop up the import wizard. This is where you tell it what kind of information you're bringing into the system. So as I said, we're going to be doing companies, customers. And all I need to do is point it to that spreadsheet that I have filled out with all my company information. And open that. It'll pop up a little window that says it was successful, or any error messages that may have occurred. And we just click OK, and we can go verify that those locations or the companies, excuse me, were brought in properly. And there you go. So now you're tracking all your companies in Oil Country OS, and you can see that the company type information populated over here. That really beats having to create this new click this new button and filling this out for 100, 150 companies. These spreadsheets don't have that much information simply because I'm just demonstrating, but a lot of the imports do get rather lengthy. So doing it one by one is not very efficient. So this is the most basic import you can do is the company one. The locations is the location import is very similar to this in the way it works. What I wanted to show you is that whenever you do this import, wherever you have that spreadsheet, it's going to do two things. It's going to create a copy of it, and it's going to create a log. Now this copy is what actually gets imported, and the system will actually remove, if I open this up, it'll mark these green if they were successfully imported. So if you have an unsuccessful import, for example, if I had a name that was too long, then it would highlight it red and let you know that, hey, the name's too long. And this this log that it creates gives you error messages. So this is where they would be populated had we had an error message. And I will demonstrate that some of those error messages in one of these other imports. Since you need just so you know, it's not a it's not a fatal thing. It's just usually name is too long or something already exists in the system. So that's the basic concept of how the import utility works. If anybody has any questions, I'll stop and answer those. Otherwise, we'll move on to the locations and then get into some of the more in-depth ones. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the locations import. Where's my desktop? All right. So here we have a list of wells, of example wells that I pre-configured. They have no particular naming convention or really any sort of real data. It's just kind of I think this is our phone number here at the office. But you can see you have much the same information that you do for your companies, but for the wells instead. And you can designate, yard or region or whatever the type of location is. We're just using well for this example. But you can populate your AFEs, your location information, and external ID. The external ID is for integrating with different systems. For example, if you have an accounting systems like QuickBooks and you have some naming convention there, some abbreviation codes for these locations, you can tie them in using that external ID. So whenever you do a export for QuickBooks, it'll tie in nicely, and you won't get any duplicates or anything like that. Again, this one's pretty self-explanatory, so we're just going to go ahead and complete the locations import. Oh, looks like we have some missing information, so we're going to go ahead and fill this out and set most of these to active. I'll set one to inactive. All right, and we'll save that. And then go into the admin console again. Again, right-click on the settings button. Then go to the import section, double-click on general import, and this time we're going to do a locations list. Then we point it to our spreadsheet, click open, and again it's just going to pop up with a successful dialog. Alright, now we can go into our locations and see that all that information was imported, including the status, AFEs, all that good stuff. So now we have my one default yard and all these different wells, and now I'm free to manipulate them, set them up with racks, or assign parent IDs to them, what have you. So, any questions on those two? Those were pretty easy and simple to track, but if you guys have any questions, I'll answer them. And there is a certain order that you should do these imports in. For example, if you're brand new to Oil Country OS and are setting up your system for the first time, I'd recommend doing it in this particular order with your companies, locations, master parts, and then your existing inventory. It's just better that way, especially since you're assigning companies and locations to the inventory that you're bringing in. So the order does have does kind of matter here. All right. So, all right. So let's take a look at what a master part import would look like. Now the master parts in Oil Country OS are your templates. And here we actually have a list of some of the master parts we have in here. We have all our services. And these are pretty simple. This is just a part number and a description. But when you get into tubing, casing, and OCTG, there's pipe size, weight, grade, and all sorts of different little properties that general inventory and services aren't tracked by. So that's the helpful thing about the import utilities, that it lets you bring those in how they're meant to be tracked from either existing systems or, for example, a spreadsheet. And all you have to do is download that spreadsheet, that inventory, or that master part spreadsheet, excuse me. Let's go to desktop, parts import, and here we go. Let's scroll up. I've already populated most of this information to save us some time. But we have a very simple spreadsheet. We tell it what category it's in, what part number, the description, and some of those properties. As you can see, some of this general inventory doesn't have these properties, but when we get down to OCTG and drill pipe, then you can start kind of breaking out the part number into individual properties. Now you don't have to populate anything into a lot of these columns. If you just leave it blank, then the system will import it blank. So if you don't know or you don't care about tracking a particular thing, then you don't need to bring that up. Now I'm going to show you what the spreadsheet that you'll get from the website looks like, because it's a little bit different, it's a little bit more detailed. And here we go. Now if you look at this, this is a spreadsheet which contains almost every property that inventory can have in Oil Country OS, and its name in Oil Country OS in the database itself. So you have everything from the basic ones we saw in that inventory import to inner diameter, outer diameter, coatings, inspection types, heat numbers, serial numbers, pretty much anything you can think of to track. If it's tracked in Oil Country OS, you can import it that way. And if you don't necessarily want to import something with a manufacturer, all you got to do is delete the column, and the inventory import will kind of skip over it. So basically, what I'm saying here is that you can use as much or as little as you want. Really, the only thing required for a master part import are the things I showed you here with the one I had pre-configured. Size, weight, grade, category, part number, and description. That's really all you need. For general inventory, you just need a category, part number, and description. Everything else is up to you if you want to put it in there. We, of course, always recommend that you be as general with your part numbers, because they're just simply templates for your inventory. They don't represent active or real inventory. So you want to make part numbers that are broad and cover a lot of things, and then specify and get into the details on the job level. And if you used Oil Country OS, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But we'll do some job imports so you can see the difference between the two, between the master part object and the job object. So for this one, I opted to do since I'm working with kind of test data and fake data, I opted to just do a real simple import with just size, grade, and weight, and some coupling information. And this is all you got to do, right? You take what most people track drill pipe and OCTG by, and just break it out into properties. Pretty simple. Most people only have this, like some people have a like a stock number, and then have a bunch of properties. But we like to assign the part number as kind of the name and way to find it in the system. It makes it very simple, and it helps a lot with the reports. So any questions on how you're supposed to set up configure your spreadsheet for import before we move on to actually importing it. And a thing to note on the category section here, the category needs to already exist in Oil Country OS. So if we go to the admin console, you need to go to the stock categories, and obviously this is for your OCOS administrator. Your categories need to already exist in this list in order to be picked up by the import utility. The reason for that is that we track both general inventory and OCTG. And up here you'll see the description of what ID needs to be assigned in order for that to be considered one or the other. Because general inventory doesn't have, pipe size, grade, and weight, so we track it a little bit differently. So you need to go ahead and set this up, and that's covered in another video. Set your categories up before you do the master part import, but that's not too much work. In this case, the only one that's missing, I think, is this marker joints category. It does not exist in my webinar database, so I have to add that before I can do the import. So all I need to do is add a marker joints. It's going to be treated as OCTG, so I need to assign it something less than 100, and we're going to do 41. And just click OK. Now I will be able to import these two master parts and have it assign them the marker joints category. Otherwise, if the system doesn't pick up, if the import utility doesn't pick up a category that exists in the system, it just defaults to pipe. So it will import it, and you'll just have to go in and change it once after the fact, which is kind of a pain. So putting the work up front really does help. So I'm going to save that and actually go ahead and do the import. So we're going to import this master parts list. Again, you're just using the general import. And import a parts list. Works much the same way. You just click on it and click open. Now, we may get an error on this one, considering that I think we had a duplicate part in either this or our master parts list. So we'll see what happened on the log here. We go to desktop and parts import. Here we go. So this is one of the errors. So if you have if you try to import a part number that already exists, the log will tell you that you cannot insert a duplicate. It's a violation of a primary key. And this is just kind of a bunch of lingo, but you can see a bunch of jargon, sorry. You can see right here, cannot insert duplicate key. And again, we're always here to help you guys. So if you have any questions on why you got an error on your import, you can just give us a call or spark up a live chat, and we'll walk you through everything. But basically this is telling me that the 24-foot flatbed already existed in my system, so it just skipped over it. The rest of it was imported. And if we open up the spreadsheet that it created, again, it always creates a copy of the spreadsheet and does its work off the copy. So the original is always maintained in its current form. We can see that it highlighted the part that failed. Everything else was green, and this guy was blue. So you can kind of, if you have an exceedingly long list, it's pretty easy to kind of look through it and see why particular things failed. Things will fail if you go over 50 characters on a master part name, so just be aware of that, and it'll let you know. All right, so let's go take a look and kind of compare this import that we did to our master parts list here. Go back over here, and now we see that we have all our inventory templates essentially imported into the system. And a thing to note with the pipe size, grade, and weight, if you prefer to do it with decimals as opposed to fractions, all you need to do is set up your spreadsheet to do so. So if I just wanted a let's say a number, or let's do general. Yeah, you can do like 2.65 or what have you. You can track it either way you want. I prefer fractions. They're just a little bit more readable for me. But if you'd like decimals, then you can just set that up in your spreadsheet, and the import utility will handle it. And we can now go open any one of these and take a look at the properties that it was brought in under. Everything is, and again, any of these properties can be imported. So I chose to do a very, very simple one, but you can set any of these properties under the specifications tab for import, and that includes unit price and cost and unit of measure. So we can just set this to feet, save it. Any questions on importing master parts? So we've essentially built our stock catalog here. It's important to note that you must do this before you do the actual inventory, your existing inventory import, since you need to assign that inventory a master part. So you can't bring material into OCAUS without it having a master part. So you have to do this stock catalog first. And obviously, your inventory import has to match the part numbers here. Now what you could do is save your master parts list to Excel. Where is it at? And then do your, enter in any quantity information on this spreadsheet, just kind of copying and pasting rows and columns or what have you. Okay. All right. So the next bit that we need to do is the inventory import. This is probably the most involved one, since you need to match up not only part numbers, but any more specific information that may be applicable only to the job. Important thing to note is that you can have multiple part numbers here, obviously, if you have different groups of inventory, different jobs for one master part. You don't have to do it all on one line item. So you can break it out how it is in your yard. If you had 50 joints on one rack and 25 on a different one, you could break it out by those jobs. And you can enter in different information that is present on the part number. So if I wanted to change one of these descriptions to something other than just the part number, what the part number has as a description, you can do that, and it won't affect anything else other than this particular line item. And for this webinar, I had just set the description of each master part to just the part number, but you can put whatever you want in there. It doesn't expect a particular value. But you could set inspection or color band here, and it really uses the same spreadsheet that I showed you earlier, that very detailed one, if I can find it. It uses this exact same spreadsheet, the import utility does, or the inventory import does. The only thing different between the master part import and the inventory import is the count. So the joint count and the footage count. It's the only thing different between the two. So you can use this spreadsheet for both of those, and just kind of get more specific on the job level than you did on the master part. The only thing that has to match up is that part number. It has to be the exact same thing that you have in Oil Country OS, or the import utility will give you an error saying it doesn't know where to put that material, and it'll skip over it. And like I said, you can have multiple line items. So now we're just going to give it a joints and footage count for each one of these. So I'm going to say something very generic across the board just for time's sake. I'm going to set all these to 100 joints, 200 feet. And actually, I think this guy is a consumable, so we're just going to do 1 or 5, and we're not going to give it any footage. We're going to save that, and we're going to assign it a status. So how you want this to be received? Do you want it to be received to storage or to status of received? This is where you would assign it. Received is the default, simply because that's how inventory is brought into the system when you're not doing an import. And we're going to put it in webinar yard, which is my default yard here in this database. And we're going to put all these on rack A1. Or we'll put them all in different racks. And we can even assign a unit price to these. So what if you're selling any of this, you can just type in a unit price form. Again, all of these columns have been removed just for the sake of simplicity, but on the spreadsheet you get from the website, from the support site, it'll have all those columns for you, and you can just take out the ones you don't need. So it's not like you have to memorize what the column names are. And for the most part, it'll use common sense terms to place that information into the system. All right. So we're going to save that and minimize it. And we're going to go into our Pipe Explorer, our current inventory system. I did a blank search here with no filters, and it returned nothing. So we have no inventory in our system yet. So let's remedy that. So we're going to import jobs. If you're not familiar with the system, jobs is the base unit of inventory here. That's all that means. It's where the inventory is stored. So we're going to import jobs and find our spreadsheet. There we go. It's going to think for a little bit. We're going to click OK, and then we're going to go search for inventory again. And now we see that all our inventory has been brought into this into the system. Location information, pretty much everything we assigned to it on that import has been brought in. And we can take a look at it. We can open them up. We can see that this consumable item is general inventory, so it doesn't have a lot of the different properties. It just has account and the part number essentially. But you could have a serial number, model number, what have you. Let's take a look at one of these pipe category jobs. And you see that all the specifications have come over. Again, if you leave them blank on the, if I did, for example, not include size, weight, and grade, it's just going to grab them from the master part you assigned it. So if I wanted to make this, for example, a different condition than the master part is assigned, then I can do that on the import as well, and it won't affect anything other than this. Important to note is the fact that these job tally IDs, the job number, are unique and are created by the system whenever the inventory is imported. So you don't have to assign job tally IDs. It's done automatically in the system, and these essentially represent each one of these line items here. And these imports have been very small for time's sake, but the utility will handle very, very large imports. I believe the last one we did was a list of over 5,000 well sites. And don't be alarmed if it takes a few seconds to complete the import once you click the OK button on the spreadsheet. It's just thinking and putting everything in there, so do be patient. But it doesn't take too long. Even the 5,000 well one didn't take long. All right, so those are the 4 ways to bring in new information into the system. The next bit I want to cover is how to do a part update, and this is more for like end of the year audits and corrections to part numbers that corrections to a large amount of part numbers. So, for example, if I go into my master parts list and say I want to change the pipe size conventions to decimals instead of fractions, I could open each one of these master parts, go over to the specifications section, and assign it a decimal. Then I could save it and do that for each one of these. But that's a very time-consuming process and not good for, it's just not efficient to do for a large amount of parts. It's great for 1 or 2, but whenever you have to do it to your entire parts list, it's just not feasible. So what we've included in the import suite is the update parts list. And all that is it allows you to change any of the category or any of the specifications on a part except for the part number, which is the name of it. That must remain the same. But you can change the category, the description, pipe size, grade, weight. Any of those columns on that big spreadsheet that I showed you can be updated. So my suggestion would be in order to avoid conflict with the part numbers and having to remember and exporting them manually, my suggestion would be to use the Save button here at the top. If you click on the arrow to the right of it, you can send it to Excel, which will create the spreadsheet for you. And we're going to put this on our desktop, and we'll call it something like our parts list update. And okay, it's going to give you a spreadsheet like this. Excuse me. Now you can either add or remove columns. Again, if you leave them blank, it's just going to leave whatever is there or skip over it if you don't have anything. But now I can start going in here and changing these to a decimal, for example. So I'm going to highlight the whole row, and we're going to do we're just going to do a number, and we can see that that fraction has been converted into a decimal for each one of these. And we can save that. You can make changes to any of these columns, like I said. Any of the properties that are tracked in the system can be changed this way. So we can just save that and go back into our import utility. With the general, again, it's just from the general import list. And we're going to update a parts list. And here we go. Webinar parts list import update. Now it's going to ask you if you want to update the jobs associated with these part numbers. So assuming you're doing a year-end audit, then yes, you're going to have a lot of jobs assigned to these part numbers. jobs that you've already shipped, jobs that are currently active in your system, and this gives you the option to push these updates out to them. So you don't have to worry about kind of the continuity and consistency of it. It's going to make sure that your system is standardized across the board. So we're just going to hit yes. We're going to say we want all the jobs to be updated. It's thinking. Again, this is one of the more processing intensive ones, since it's going through the entire history and transaction log of everything. So now let's go see if we did that right. Scroll down here, and there we go. So our pipe size has changed to decimal as opposed to fraction. Now we told it to change the convention on the existing inventory as well. So let's double check that happened. We're going to go to, I think it was size. We're going to enable size, and we can see that it's no longer a fraction. It's now a decimal. So that's an easy way and the most efficient way to update and kind of reorganize or clean up your parts category in your inventory at the end of the year, or if you've made mistakes, or what happens a lot of the time is companies will give the ability to create master parts to 2 or 3 people, and each one of those has each one of them has a different idea of how parts should be named, or the size convention. So when you have that, it's kind of it can get confusing and messy. So with this update utility, you can quickly and efficiently change it and standardize it all again. And again, the only thing you can't change on that is the part number. In order to rename a part number, you have to do that manually for each one. That's the only thing that's kind of hard locked. Everything else can be changed. Do you guys have any questions on that so far? That's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. It was a quick 30-minute little webinar. And again, the link to, I'll post the link to that support article in the chat. And it has step-by-step guides on how to do this, including the link to download the spreadsheets. And that'll be provided on a YouTube video as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'll stay on a little bit afterwards to answer any questions. Again, if you guys run into any trouble with the system, or would like more training, or kind of want to walk through everything on your end, then you can email us at support@archondata.com, or go to our support website, support.archondata.com, and click the live chat button here on the right-hand side. And one of us is always on, and we'll assist you immediately. So thank you all for attending. That's all I have for you.